The pandemic and subsequent lockdowns have seen a surge in the use of dating apps, but does the rise in the use of dating apps signal the end for our shared humanity?
The pandemic right now creating a surge in a particular type of app. Any guesses? It's dating apps.
It wasn't hard to guess. The word dating apps was next to your head in big white letters.
It's been a record-setting past few months for match groups, which own apps like Match, Hinge, OkCupid, and Tinder.
I suppose the fact is that we need love anyway. We're social animals. One of the big ongoing conversations during this pandemic is, what are we going to do without our ordinary social impulses being fulfilled? Our need to congregate, our need to touch one another. For thousands and thousands of years, our social bonds, hierarchies and relationships were built upon touch. Of course, over recent years, this has necessarily become modified and more protocols around it as we become more cautious about what touch and power indicates and means. But now in the pandemic, touch has been bleached out altogether. What's happening on a social level, let alone a romantic and intimate level? And what are the dangers of commodifying romance, turning romance and matters of the heart into a product, an object?
Bumble reports 1 in 3 daters on their app are placing bigger emphasis on finding a partner, and the Match app alone saw a 40% increase in engagement.
What's happening really is people are bloody desperate, cooped up, alone. Look, I'm a family person, isn't I now? I've got kids and a missus, but I feel like if I was on my own, I'd be all over that Tinder thing. I mean, how young people are meant to observe these kind of rules and regulations when they live, let's face it, in a different hormonal environment. And then people of any age that are alone, how are they meant to navigate that space? And if there's a phone in your hand offering you human contact, that most natural of, not resources, of phenomena, then how would you not reach towards it?
The pandemic has changed so much in our lives, but love is not canceled, nor is flirting, apparently.
Never canceled.
Flirting with each other, aren't they?
Dating in a socially distanced world has its own unique challenges. Singles can still find ways to flirt from afar. Erica,
Erica, this is some of my flirting right now. Erica!
I mean,
Hello.
you know, thoughts to everyone out there trying to get it done.
Get it done.
What is flirting now?
Flirting looks different, but the first thing to do is dress to impress. If you're in person or not, you should always dress up for your dates, but especially virtually, still dress up. I mean, you can still wear pajamas or sweats on the bottom. Just make sure you, at least on the top half.
Who are you dating? Mrs. Doubtfire?
Now that we have our faces covered with a mask half of the time, you really have to learn how to have emotions through your eyes. So you have to flirt with your eyes these days.
I may be wearing a mask here, but here are my eyes. They tell a story. Also, I've not covered my genitals.
Coronavirus dating is a thing now. The new website OkZoomer caters to quarantine college students.
Even prior to the pandemic, we were living more atomized, disconnected lives, abstracted from the values which have evolved alongside us. Communal creatures, primates that need eye contact, connection and touch to feel okay. When our bodies go too long without human touch, we have to exist with a dearth of chemicals such as serotonin, dopamine and oxytocin. Without them, we're more susceptible to depressive episodes. When we are denied our usual interactions, such as hugging, cuddling, kissing, etc., our brains start to release more of the stress hormone cortisol. We've become absented from the conditions required for our own survival. I'm not querying the laws that accompany this pandemic, merely pointing out that when forming a perspective around the response to a pandemic, all criteria ought be considered: mental health, economics, and the very experience of being human. Charles Eisenstein wrote an interesting piece where he said that the pandemic has revealed the way that we fetishize and fear death, that death is something that we can't incorporate into our understanding of reality, that we would rather just prolong life limitlessly without any consideration for what the quality of life is. Again, obviously I have no opinion on the regulations around pandemics and lockdowns and such, but the consequences for people being denied the most basic forms of interaction are pretty clear to read. And the same way that we're expecting a massive economic depression in a few years, if and when this situation subsides, I imagine there will be a mental health and psychological well-being correlative to that, a kind of, literal mass depression.
The matchmaking service It's Just Lunch is offering digital dating coaches, and new customers are signing up daily.
I think we're going to see increases in sexting and phone sex as people are prohibited from getting together physically but still have desire and arousal.
It's odd, isn't it, to see someone on the news talking about sexting and phone sex as a cultural phenomenon. It's not that long ago that it was simply a casual reference in a comedy show. And now it's the basis for people's romantic lives.
Hello, everyone. Long time no see.
This is where Serena Kerrigan comes in.
I'm the first person to create a reality show on Instagram.
She launched a dating reality show called
Let's Date. Cheers!
Friday nights, 2 blind video dates, and an Instagram live audience commenting on it all.
They really play God.
Playing God, that never ends badly for anyone. I suppose this is what I'm concerned about, is the appetite to turn natural behaviours into products and entertainment. I suppose this has been happening for a while, even in cheeky, cheesy, old-fashioned ways, shows like Blind Date, but I suppose it seemed so Saturday night then, so fun. There was Cilla Black, there was the voiceover from Graham.
The decision is yours.
Now that everything has been amplified through the type of media that we use, and as Marshall McLuhan will tell you, the medium is the message. When you have fully immersive media such as we have, you're no longer talking about an issue of scale, but a rather more complex and overwhelming phenomena. My sense is that the spaces between us, the spaces inside us, are being so rapidly commodified and utilised that we're being excluded from our own nature. It's the corporatisation of the inner space. After all, love is a kind of sacred thing, isn't it? Love, the sense that another person's well-being is more important than your own, that you are drawn to them, that you want to be of service to them, that you want to know and understand them. Of course, often bunched up with love are things like need, dominance, all sorts of things that are kind of, I suppose, natural human inclinations. But for love itself to be mobilised and utilised in this way is unavoidably dystopic, even though it's also kind of titillating. And I imagine if you're in a position where you're lonely and you're yearning and you're hungry and you're desperate, then what the hell else are you going to do? Very easy for me to say this. I've got children and that part of my life is over, but I feel like, I was a very desperate person when I was single, and I think that I would have been hypnotized by this.
Plus, there's a built-in first date conversation.
What's really interesting about coronavirus is it became the icebreaker.
There's an icebreaker. No one's fucking going anywhere or doing anything.
Which OkCupid has leaned into.
We started dropping in questions about COVID and COVID-related issues.
Are you quarantining alone with family? Do you know someone who has had COVID? Have they recovered? Did you lose your job? Can you pay your rent? Are you furloughed?
All right. Bloody hell. Not even had a sip of my wine yet.
An estimated 25 million American adults use dating apps in the past year. Some experts say these dating apps keep people locked in an endless cycle of matches and rejections.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with an endless cycle of matches and rejections. I mean, that won't lead to a hollowing out of your soul.
28-year-old Jeremy Cohen, the Brooklyn man who fell for a girl he saw out his window, dancing on her roof.
So I went out to my deck and I waved hi. She waved hi back. I felt a little bit of a connection.
But there's nothing you can do about it.
Let him look out of his window. It's romantic. It's like Romeo and Juliet. At least it's something that's not got a bloody app between the pair of them.
Unless you have a drone and the courage to fly your phone number to a total stranger. Of course, Tori couldn't come over, so she sat at her table and he at his.
You look beautiful!
You look beautiful! Help me! This is on the fucking news! While it's happening! My life is the news!
For their second date, this week the couple went for a walk, using a giant bubble Jeremy bought on eBay.
Jeremy's like Inspector Gadget. I was like, what kind of crazy life is this guy? What's going on in Brooklyn?
Tori was bowled over by the gesture.
Does he need to go in that bubble? Can't they just... That's not even the law, is it?
It is hard to maintain a long-distance relationship, even if it's just across the street.
I don't think that you should be making light of that, like a guy in a bubble with a bunch of flowers. You're going to give them the bubbles, it's going to burst the bubble. The whole thing's too mad and confusing. And I would say this is a sort of an attempt to normalise a situation it's beyond normalisation, really. If you think of the move from hunter-gatherer cultures to agriculture, that's enormous and significant. Human behaviour irrevocably alters. New cultures are born. We're outside of nature suddenly. We can control and dominate nature in a way that we never had before. No longer necessary the hunting and gathering skills, the harmony, the subtle harmony of nature where we recognise we ourselves are it. Now this kind of last vestige of ordinary animalism expressed divinely has been somehow filtered through the 0101 digital veneer that's sort of been laid across everything. It does seem to me that what we are experiencing is the stripping away of humanity at an unconscionable degree.
If you're catching feelings but don't want to catch coronavirus, follow these simple dating tips. Get to know them over the phone. Ask if they have symptoms. It can feel awkward, but it shouldn't.
You can't just tell people it shouldn't.
Dating.com suggests cooking the same meal together on a video chat, or using the Watch Together feature on Netflix.
We're sort of being prepared for a really bleak future. Is this what's happening? Is this propaganda for dystopia that we're witnessing now?
These days, our streets are lonely, and so it appears are people who are so used to traveling down them. The pandemic has created or exposed a void in many of us.
The pandemic has provided a magnifying lens that showed how far we're drifting from our own nature, our own impulses and instincts. Of course, our impulses and instincts include behaviours that are not acceptable. Violence, for example, is a natural behaviour that needs to be curbed, controlled and socially prohibited in cases where an individual is incapable of doing it. But the point of commodification, it feels to me that there ain't no room for you to be you anymore, that your life is becoming so mandated and prescribed by technocracy and technology that we're at risk of becoming something less than human, less even than animal, no connection to what we actually are. This attempt to turn romance and dating into just another product will have consequences. Of course, some of the consequences will mean profit for sort of, dating apps or whatever, and other sort of lifestyle satellite organizations or subsets of this phenomena. But the cost for the human soul will be far greater.